WH People Limited is a dynamic people and business consultancy dedicated to helping organizations unlock value through their greatest asset, their people. WH People partner with clients, from ambitious SMEs to global enterprises, to transform how people technology is used across the workforce. Whether it's rethinking system architecture, streamlining processes and governance, or driving change at scale, we help your teams deliver faster, more cost-effective results, while strengthening a culture of positive transformation. Our 3 core pillars: global payroll and workforce management strategy, market navigation and evaluation services to guide critical decisions, technology performance coaching, empowering teams to unlock the value in their existing tech solutions, process performance coaching, enhancing efficiency and aligning processes to business goals. At WH People, we believe it's all about people, because when your people thrive, your business follows.
Hello and welcome back to Global PayFest. I'm Natalie Lloyd and I'm joined today by Wendy Muirhead, founding partner of WH People. Hey Wendy.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. We're at Wendy's house today. Can I say that?
Yeah, of course you can.
No,
Absolutely. People that see me on webinars will see this room in various different backgrounds. So I'm totally comfortable with that.
So normally it's me welcoming Wendy to the session, but today it's Wendy welcoming me. So today we're going to be talking about selecting the right payroll technology for your business. So Wendy, do you want to give us a quick intro to what people can expect from today's session?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm Wendy Muirhead. I set up a global payroll and workforce management consultancy business right about 2 years ago now, just over 2 years ago. And what we do with the business is we help our clients in a number of ways. We help to understand the market, navigate the market, because the market is ever changing and there's new providers that are coming around in different regions. And so we help clients to understand that in a better way. And we also help our clients to get the maximum value out of the technology platforms that they have so that they can really help their people thrive. We genuinely believe that when people make the difference, and so when people are really engaged in an organization, they understand the purpose of the organization, that organizationally you get the best results. And so we help our customers to make sure that their technology works in the most efficient way to get that engagement so their people can thrive. And finally, we really help to optimize processes, because what you'll find with data and technology is that you really need to have good, clean data to get those kind of global reports that everyone's looking for. Yeah. So we really set the business up to help shape that. And I hope over the course of the next hour that your listeners and viewers can really understand in a little bit more detail around, what is it to navigate the market, how to get the best out of the business case that you've got approved, how to even get CEOs to get involved in that, so that you're really equipped with almost a toolkit that you can refer back to maybe take some of those learnings and insights that might be able to help you as you're going through your transformation journey.
Of course. And a lot of the viewers will be, either going through a transformation or maybe opening up their organization into an entity that they've never worked in before.
Sure.
So I think we hear that word a lot, transformation. Is it a buzzword?
Well, change is constant. And that's all that really means, right? Time and change are the 2 things that I always say is constant. You can't stop it. And if you don't adapt, you die. Your competitors will adapt. Your people will adapt. New generations are coming into the workforce. You have to adapt to make sure that you can engage everyone in the right way. Even with upskilling, I was doing a session with a client earlier on today. And, even upskilling the existing payroll teams so that they're more proficient in new technology, AI, all these new tools that are coming out. How can they use that to best help them to be able to deliver great payroll service to their people across the world? All these things are really, really important. So yes, a lot of people are talking about transformation. And 10 years ago, you'd hear the learning goings of transformation. But actually now, it's really common to have transformational experts and teams and even chief transformation officers in organizations. 10 years ago, you never have heard of that. So I think that it's not a buzzword. It is just really understand, what does it mean? And what does it mean for me in my role and for my organization?
You're absolutely right, because, a few years back, and maybe not so much 10, but a few, you'd hear someone say they're going through a transformation and be like, whoa, this is massive. And now you're right, you are hearing it from everyone. And it depends on your organization. Like it could be something relatively small that changes the way you do things, or it could be something as big as implementing a new technology or AI into business, or completely changing the way you do things, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things, just even on that note, on transformation used to be, if we're doing a transformation project, it would be seen as we're doing a large like ERP program, or it was 10 million or a million plus in terms of revenue investment. And so those kind of programs, you know, people were always thinking, right, oh, this has got visibility. The CEO is touching everybody in the organization across the world. How do you make sure that you actually deliver against that business case?
Yeah.
And you're right though, even a small change around optimizing a process to make it easier for your payroll operations team, that's a change that needs the same kind of process. It needs the thought of really understanding what's not working. If it doesn't feel right, then something's not working. So actually documenting what does that look like, what you would like the outcome to be. And sometimes you might need a little bit of investment to actually look at, you know, how you can get from A to B on that business process improvement. And the changes that even that small change can make can actually mean a massive amount to the team that are delivering the service, which in turn will deliver great service to all the employees. So, you know, you're right, it doesn't matter the size of it. It's all around the actual process and that continual improvement plan.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there about potentially needing investment or at least needing buy-in. How are leaders who are, particularly in the payroll space, looking to go through one of these projects? How do they get that stakeholder buy-in?
Well, depending on how connected you are with the CEO or with the CFO, and sometimes this depends on where you sit. Like I'm sure you've heard it multiple times around payroll departments, sometimes sit in the HR department, sometimes sit in the finance department. There's debates around whether they have their own seats at the table. And sometimes, depending on the connection that you have, you know, those payroll leaders are actually sitting in the boardroom alongside the CEO. So when you're getting that level of buy-in, if you're one of these people and you talk to the CEO on a regular basis because the CEO recognizes the importance of your role, it's really easy to go and ask for money, right? Because fundamentally, that's what you're looking for is the investment and the support so that you can remove blockers as you're making change happen. And that's where having that connection can be really important. But there's other people that work in organizations and it's a huge process to even go through to get your business case allocated into the board pack to then go and ask for that investment. Sometimes organizationally, you never get that opportunity to even present your case. It has to go through a steering group and then an individual executive sponsor, typically C-suite, will take that and actually have that debate and try to lobby to get that investment for the payroll department. And that could be global payroll, new technology, new services. So it really depends on the organization that you sit in, how you're viewed by the organization. And particularly when you start to get more into enterprise, large enterprise organizations, you tend to find that there's some really strict protocols around how you can even go through that process. And I always say the biggest thing to think about is data and metrics. And what does that mean on connecting what your vision is and what you need? How do you connect that to the bigger business plan? Because the reality is every organization is looking to grow either profits or grow globally. And they're looking to have brilliant customer experiences and beat their competitors. These things are consistent, irrespective of what vertical sector you sit in. So actually, if you know what the vision of the business is and the direction of the strategic initiatives that's going to help them to get to that next milestone, how do you connect your own case for change? How do you put that and link it directly into that strategic alignment? Because that way then you start, coupled with the metrics, coupled with, you know, the support of the C-suite members, you start to be able to build that case, and articulating that problem is often the thing. So you know what it's like. Payroll departments will work right through the night. They'll work weekends. They will not stop until that payroll is right and people are happy. And that's just the nature. That's why I love our global payroll community, because consistently across the world, that's the type of culture that payrollers have. I love it. Like, I'm really passionate to try and see how can we make it easier for them. And so they will constantly work night and day to get the job done, which then gives the impression to the CEO or to the leadership team that things are all great.
Yeah.
And that's where you're like, well, if things aren't great, how do you demonstrate to them that you're still delivering on excellent service? But actually, this is the reality of what my team goes through, and the limited resources or limitations of the technology or lack of visibility of where we're moving to. And how do you make sure that you shape that business case in a way that they understand that? Because most people will think, and it pains me, but when I hear people say that payroll just pushes the button,
Oh, stop.
it's a cost center. Like, it really pains, because we all know that there's so much effort that goes into every single pay period that happens with the team, and everyone's judging on what's went wrong, how do we rectify, how do we make sure we resolve. So it's a very reactionary, because payroll's emotional.
Yeah.
People go to work to get paid. So that level of emotion and loyalty that people have is really connected in through the work that the payroll team do. So to answer your question, there's so many variations around how to get their buy-in. It's really understanding how to navigate that internally in your business, and then shape that case for change in a way that articulates that your team do great work.
Yeah.
But here's the opportunities for us to make sure that we shore up, that we're able to help the business grow.
Yeah, because you don't have to be somebody super senior in your organization to make change in payroll, right? As long as you are making it seem like, I mean, let's be honest, people make it seem super easy because they're working so hard to make sure that nobody sees when there's an issue.
Yeah.
And then there's that piece of, obviously you touched on data there. Like, they say data is the new currency. And I think that's true. Like, it doesn't matter who you are in that payroll team. You don't have to be the payroll director. You don't have to be the one leading a transformation. If you can deliver the data to show the changes that you've made in an organization, to show the cost savings of your work, then you are still sitting in that strategic kind of role.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to that point around data, CEOs want to make decisions. I run 2 businesses, and in WH People, I want to know if I'm making a decision about where I put my spend or where I focus my time and my team's time. I want to know I'm basing that off accurate information.
Yeah.
And that's no different whether you're a small business or whether you're a large global enterprise business. Everyone's after that. And the bigger and more global you are, the more complexity that you have, because you're governing over multiple different jurisdictions. You've got so many different requirements for legislation, so many different norms and cultural norms that you have to manage. And whilst you're driving the culture in your own organization, you want to make sure that there's a level of consistency, whether you're sitting in Hawaii or sitting in New Zealand. So that's the piece around how do you make people feel really connected to the business, and paying them accurately on the timers that they expect. That's the first engagement lever on making sure that they have that. So, all the other cultural values that you have within your organization and how you connect people's performance to values is often like straight off the bat. And that's why you hear so often around people looking for stretch and purpose and career pathways in the organization. But it can be really difficult because you're sitting in one location. And even if you travel all over the world to see everybody, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So having those controls and having access to the data, I mean, even over the years, I've been in payroll now nearly 20 years, and genuinely sometimes you speak to clients and clients can't easily get a headcount report, or there's considerations around, I'm going to acquire a new business and I've got X amount of time now to get them off that platform and get them on. And you just grab what you can so you can generate the pay slip for them. There's no consideration around harmonizing the data, harmonizing, the contractual packs and going through those discussions with the employees and In some countries, you're going to have, employee groups and, works councils to have to manage as well. Not to mention if you're unionized. I mean, that's a whole different kettle of fish.
That's a whole number 20.
That's another hour in itself. But, when you're going through those things, it's often what you'll see is organizations will make those changes because they have to, so that they can get the payroll migrated over. Years later, they're still operating where they're running 10, 12, sometimes I've even seen 30 payrolls that have never been harmonized with terms and conditions. And there's different pay groups and different norms and cycles and frequencies, and it's all just moving around. And that's the opportunity where sometimes just even taking a pause and saying, right, we're going to harmonize how we do this, because then it'll help us to get better data out the back end of it. And see, when I say harmonization, what I mean by that, Natalie, is, it's often when you look at reports and pay elements, I've got different conventions, different naming conventions. It's agreeing a global framework around, actually, rather than name, it's pretty easy, first name, Christian name, middle name. But if every different country is structured it slightly differently, like name 1, name 2, name 3, or first name, middle name, surname, you can see there where you've got actually like multiple rows of data there, and actually just agreeing that we're all going to stick to that uniformed approach. Often then people can put the information in the right bucket, and then the output of analytics is really glorious, because then you can start to see in a uniformed way exactly where your people are and what their headcounts are, what commissions they're getting, what their breakdowns of global pay elements like.
Especially if you're using a system, right, that has automation built in, it's going to only pull out what you ask it to pull out. So if you're putting in name with a capital N, it's not going to pull out name with a little n.
Correct.
So that having your data all the same is super, super important.
I'm going to blow your mind, right? Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Are you ready for this? I hope so. I'm going to blow your mind, because in the world of automation and driving efficiencies, I've been working really closely with a really good friend of mine, and she has built bots into her payroll operations, and has assigned a user ID into their global payroll platform. And so that when they make the request, their bot can actually go in, can actually create the report. And if people are moving language, like moving things around, because they're using AI in natural language being English rather than coding, then the bot actually can recognize when things are evolving dynamically and be able to generate that report. So it saves that level of time of pulling lots of different data sets, somebody compiling it together or pushing it into a platform to then produce some really amazing analytical information. And so, the world that we're working towards with actually introducing AI in our world of payroll operations, that's a really exciting space to be in. Whilst being careful and measured and making sure that you're doing it in a protected way, because I know a lot of people still are quite nervous about the unknown of what does AI mean for the world, for your business, for your payroll team, especially with the data that we're managing and how confidential our information is.
Yeah, because if your teams aren't trained to manage that properly, it could be chaos.
It could be chaos. And that's why having that understanding and then thinking about the skills that we have in our payroll operations today and what we might need for our skills for the future, that's quite an exciting space to go into.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's going to be people here that are thinking of making a change, especially things like AI, who want to make a difference in their payroll operations. They want to be seen as more strategic. They want to make use of that really important data that, like, let's be honest, lots of companies have been sitting on for a long time and maybe not utilizing it to the best that it could be.
Yeah.
Where do you suggest they start?
Cleansing, first of all, documentation and cleansing, because data needs to be clean and it needs to be the source of truth. So a lot of the time I've worked with organizations where they've went through big programs, where they've launched new systems of record, global systems of record, yet they still have more confidence in the payroll system. And the reason for that is that the payroll system is so scrutinized, and it often will have information from the system of record, but it may have time information from a different system. It may have commissions information from another system. It may have, e-trader is another great example of if there's stocks that's being piled in. So payroll is the system that will collect all of that. And that's where, that whole building the gross process can be really quite time consuming for payroll departments, because sometimes you have to wait to the window. You might not necessarily get accurate information immediately because you need to go and chase the manager, or you need to go and say, right, you're late for cutoff. I need to be able to process the data. And so there's always been this bit of a pinch for payroll departments to actually then look at all that information, compile it in a way that they use for their own system. It might be one system, might be 70 odd systems, depending on the type of organization and how you've structured your business. Mm-hmm. And so actually getting all of that information processing it through, and then checking that actually the gross to net looks correct, and checking that for any areas of potential risk, and rectifying it so that you run it again before you actually go into the live run. Those are the things that, it takes the time. And that's where you can really start to see that there's opportunities to drive where efficiencies, automation, technology providers that are out there. There's a lot that will actually do a lot of that processing, and the technology will actually focus your eye to the area that you need to focus your time. And that's where it's the investment to look at it. But if you have to try and build the business case to demonstrate, well, actually, we're growing at a rate of knots, my resources are stretched, I need global consistency, I'm not getting great service from all these different providers, and it's a headache to keep on top of all of the different phone calls, because if you're working with 30 providers, it's 30 phone calls, 30 sets of invoices, 30 different languages potentially.
Yeah, and 30 different people telling you their system is the best system.
Exactly. So when you're thinking about all of these things, it's how do you shape all of that so that the CEO then is interested in, well, it's going to make payroll's life easier if we look at changing to a different provider or optimizing to a global technology platform that can help payroll deliver in an easier way. So back to your point though, around actually how do you start? If you've got good clean data, mm-hmm. and you know that there's consistency in that data, you can actually start to map out what does that process look like. Because it's amazing actually, just even in the last 2 years, documentation is missing in a lot of organizations because people are changing so fast that they've actually forgotten what was the reason of why we were making the change, or we made this change 10 years ago, we've been on this journey, and we don't have the measures of why we were tracking the importance of value for making that change and who did it and why. So when we're working with clients, particularly when we're looking at optimization of processes, we're always saying, like, well, what's the true data sources? Because could you imagine if you're a CEO and you make a decision and it's wrong data?
Yeah.
Like that could be catastrophic. Or you go and you have an audit and you think your data is accurate, and then actually you realize you've been breaching minimum wage because you haven't been calculating it to the right methodology. When those things happen, again, it could be really harmful reputational damage. It could cost you in compliance fines. And then often governments will go and revisit that situation. So that once you've been through that, it's really common for governments to go and revisit campaigns and shut your door again. And sometimes if they do it again, it can be as bad as prosecution. So depending on what country you're in. So I think that understanding that the data that you've got is accurate and it's correct. And then actually, how do you document what's that data mean? Because I think that's a miss for us in our payroll world. I think a lot of the time we've got great, accurate, cleansed, scrutinized data, and we give it to other people to present it. We give it to the CHRO or the head of the board. We give it to other people to present what the insights might be. Whereas we could upskill ourselves and be brave and confident to go and do that and demonstrate that we got the strategic insight to be able to help the business to make those decisions accurately based off of our data.
Yeah, because payroll is one of those areas of the business where oops doesn't just cut it. Like, there is no space for just a bit of human error. Like, if you get it wrong, that's affecting, someone's pay, someone's life. They've got to pay their mortgage that day. You don't know how that's going to affect the customer at the end of the day. So while you're talking about data there and the importance of having super clean, super real data that you can use, is that an area in payroll where AI could be more helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, if you've got, but AI, one of the things with AI is that it is learning off of data sets, right? And you've always got to be careful around those that are public versus internal platforms.
Yeah.
Right. So a special underscore and shout out on that space. You really do want to make sure that you're actually like really working with the tools that you have within your own organization, and it's ring fenced and there's governance channels and it's protected. But absolutely, AI can absolutely help you with that. Because if you have data sets in there, you can actually start to create, whether it's bots, and you can build your own bots, and you can leverage, Q&A chatbots. You've seen it all the time in the payroll world where technology providers are launching their chatbots, and they're, giving you the ability to ask questions of, I'm considering moving into Spain. What's the situation then, and what do I need to have in order to be able to compliantly set up my business in Spain? And I'm in Singapore. What's the public holidays in Singapore? What would be the average cost model of a particular area in Singapore? So, actually having the ability to leverage that information from your provider, if they're global, a lot of them are starting to think about how they actually get that information so that you've got real value added support services and through asking that Q&A question. They can help you not just with the cultural aspects of an organization, but also what's the compliance rules so that you're remaining up to date, especially as legislation changes or, tax rules change, there's tax updates. So keeping on top of that and understanding what the impacts are and having that information to hand is really critical. And that's the area where I think that interaction, some people are comfortable going on and type it in a chat bot. I go with my bank and I'll type a question, and I'm quite happy to interact with the chatbot, with the bank, if I can get the outcome that I want. Whereas sometimes I really want to speak to someone. And so I think that providers and technology, payroll providers out there are starting to think about how can they make information more accessible and do it in a way that we're actually using AI and technology today.
For sure. And I think this is a really important question to ask. Where people are going out and looking at a new system that can change the way they're doing their payrolls, realistically, every software company is telling you they're the best out there.
Yeah.
They've got AI. They're the best people. You should 100% use us.
Yeah.
Like, how do they decide? How do you pick one that's right for you?
I'm always helping my clients by looking at a process. So we've built a really rigorous process to help accelerate what that looks like. So I've worked with organizations where it's taken them 3 years to go through an evaluation. And the reason for that is because they're trying to build the data points in the first place. They're trying to build their business case. They'll sometimes get an agreement in principle by the CEO, but that doesn't mean it's signed off.
Yeah.
Right? Agreement in principle and actually getting the cash and getting the budget approval is two very different things.
You're making me laugh because my dad used to give me agreement in principle.
Agreement in principle.
Yeah. Like, you can have your pocket money if.
I do the same thing with my children. So your dad, high five for your dad. Like, I agree with that approach. So you're right. Like, you go to these various different conferences and you can go from stand to stand to stand. And they all say the same thing. We pay you first time accurately every time. Our rates are 99.999. Come see us. Ours is the glossiest thing that's out there.
And there's always a customer story, but of course it's always a brilliant customer story. So
always a brilliant customer
it's
story.
even harder to pick.
And the thing is, when they all say that, actually it's getting under the hood of really understanding what is it that their model looks like. So if you're the payroll leader and you're sitting with your global payroll operations team and you've got people in different regions, you might have people locally, you might have shared service centers, you might operate in a way that, you have team members that are on site, actually working at every single location. It's really interesting to see, how do you operate your own operational team and what does that structure look like? And then what providers that are out there offer that support? And I kind of think there's 6 different options. The way we bucketed it, we bucketed 6 different options of how to condense that in the market so that, like our clients really understand that's the kind of support model. This is the kind of framework of, nobody's got everything beautifully laid out. There's no one single brilliant provider in the market. Some are better at some areas than others. And that's where we can really help guide them on what is it you're looking for and then who best fits that match. Kind of like dating. It's like, what is it you're looking for and then who's the best fit? And then helping you understand actually if that's going to work. How do you connect in with that person at that organization and not be schmoozed by a sales cycle and some very very powerful salespeople that will show you all the bells and whistles. So I think it's really important to really understand what it is that you need for your payroll team for now. What are the top things that you really are looking for to make sure you can do a much easier job? What does that look like now? What does that look like in the future in 5 years' time? Because typically payroll providers, they'll usually sign you up for like 3 to 5 years. So there's usually a term with the contracts that you agree to, and there's quite expensive get outs. So then you're stuck. So if you've made a decision and you base that decision based on all the great things that you've heard and it doesn't come true, then you want to have recourse and have the opportunity to correct it. And if you are locked in a contract, to get out of that contract can be really expensive.
Yeah.
So
That's something I wanted to ask is, do you buy for now or do you buy for the future and almost hope it's okay for now?
you do both. You really do both, because no business is thinking about shrinking. Everyone's thinking about the complexity where they're going and how they're shaping that out. And so, you might be thinking about harmonizing and changing your operational structure and maybe making some changes about where those layers are, upskilling from having somebody sitting in every country to actually saying, I'm going to have shared services, but I'm going to have IT capability within our payroll operations team. I'm going to have analytical capability within our teams. And those things are what you should be thinking about and shaping when you're considering what technology and service providers are out there and how that can help solve your challenge right now, but also think about what that means for your vision for your payroll department in the future. And that will align to where your business is going as well.
Yeah. And this is a question from maybe a recruitment perspective, really, is we're always hearing from candidates in the market who are looking for a new role that they want somewhere where they can really get in with a system. They can learn it, they can master it, they can be the champion of that system in their organization. Is that a big part of choosing a system? Is it giving people that freedom to upskill themselves in their own career by freeing up some of that time of manual work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a couple of things on the career pathway that I've seen over the decades on payroll. I've seen so many people when they go through a transformation program that's been successful and they've been able to demonstrate the success of that program and they've been able to move it along the organization seeing the value of it, there's been promotions and even changes of career, where people have done that and then they've moved to a different organization, they've replicated again, and then they actually have started their own businesses to be able to do that. So I've seen that evolve with people's careers. But I've also seen it as well where in that space where you might be doing, entry level payroll role, and actually you're doing a lot of data entry or, transactional work, but actually upskilling yourself so that if you really have got an appetite, some people naturally just got an appetite for tech and they get really interested about building reports and, engaging. Some people like the whole engaging different managers. Some people like doing the educational piece and educating, their employees about what's in their pay slip and why it matters and what their reward package looks like. Some people like that engagement. And others are like, no, I'll stay in my room and I'll just process my payroll. And, I'm quite happy just to really drive the optimization because they're really inspired and driven by that accuracy and making sure that their payroll was flawless. So it's really about understanding and assessing the skill sets across your own entire team. Mm-hmm. And then actually looking at, right, well, if you think that your future state is going to be in this area, where's the gaps? And then where's the opportunities then on working with the technology provider? Because some technology providers out there, they've got user groups, they've got communities, they've got opportunities that you can actually get more involved.
Yeah, and they want feedback.
They are desperate for feedback, absolutely. And so if you've got somebody that's in your team that's hungry for stretch and is hungry to learn and to show leadership capabilities, but you haven't got a role for them until you move on in your role, that's a brilliant opportunity of sending them out to see what's the providers doing, what can they engage, what can they bring back as learnings for the team and for the operations that is going to help everybody do it in an easier, better way. So there's absolutely, I think that whole piece around skill set, identifying where your gaps are, and then actually having the conversation with your teams around who's got the appetite to do it. Or maybe it is that entry level person that's just joined and they're really into gaming, they're really into processing. And they would be a brilliant asset to think about, well, if we're going on an AI journey, what does that look like? And how can they upskill their skill sets in the technology that you're rolling on?
I love that. And it goes back to that piece that we mentioned earlier about you don't have to be the most senior one in your business to show people the importance of the work you're doing in payroll. And also, what you were talking about just there is a really nice example of how transformation doesn't have to be something huge.
Yeah.
By giving someone that opportunity to shine a light on work that's being done that's never been recognized, that is still transforming that function within the business. It's making it work and be understood in a completely different way than before.
Just to build on what you're saying, I think the opportunity for us in global payroll is actually those stories. We don't get to hear those stories very often. We will go to awards and we'll see industry awards, and Melanie does a great job at Global Payroll Alliance where, the awards are there and that you start to hear the stories as they're presenting the shortlist, but you don't really get to actually hear it on a regular basis, do you? It's like you might get to hear somebody go, we went live, or we just changed, or well done. And I think those are the kind of stories that even the smallest transformation could inspire somebody to actually think, that's really smart. I'm going to start thinking about that and what that would mean for my team. Unless we start sharing more openly in our community. And I think there's a real opportunity in itself for the payroll community to actually share what are others doing and what's working, what hasn't worked as well, what's failed. Why did it fail? What can I learn from that failure? Because all those things are really, really critical, insights to help you to shape what you're looking to do.
Often more important than a super great success story is this is what went wrong and this is how we could have done better story.
I always say put contingency in anything you're trying to do, because nobody wants to go and ask for money from the CEO and then we've run out of time, or we need more time, we need more budget, and then please can I have more? No CEO wants to go and nobody wants to go as a program lead and ask for more. And so actually the governance of when you're tracking in a program, global payroll change, transformation, AI, whatever that investment, if you've had it approved, the governance and the communication and the consistency of tracking what was in the original business case and how you're actually measuring that rollout or that implementation and what that means for the business on a pounds, penny, yen, like doesn't matter, whatever the currency is, whatever that consistently is, you make sure that the governance is in place so that you can stay on top. And you always factor in some contingency in there, whether it's time contingency, resource contingency, monetary budget contingency, because you will always open a box and nobody knows everything before they go into it. You can do the best discoveries in the world, but often there'll be something that was in someone's head that is actually needing to be in the technology workflow, or something that somebody missed as a consideration for an integration, or we're just rolling this out, we've just bought a new business and we need to jam that in. Like these things are happening because the world is changing and evolving all the time. So actually making sure that you've got these things factored in and having really strict governance layers and strict documentation processes around that, all of that really matters.
Okay, and when they're going to ask for that money, so they've got the proof, they've picked a system, they know what needs to be done, how do you come up with that number to ask for? Because it's not just the number that the system costs plus X% for contingency, it's encapsulating the whole project in one cost. And how do you come up with that number, and then how do you go and ask for it?
Well, that's your business case, right? So that's your problem statement, what you're trying to achieve, what resources are needed, what that investment total data metrics looks like. So building in a technology investment plan is going to be able to help you to push a button and pull all of the reports together on a regular basis so that the CEO, the CFO has got all that rich global data at their fingertips, and knowing the payroll operations is all working seamlessly. All of those things. Well, how much time is it taking for the teams to do and deliver this? Is there risk? So 6 years ago, we never thought we were all going to go in a lockdown, right? And we did. How does payroll strategically prepare for those what if we didn't think it was ever going to happen moments? And how are we going to be able to still service payroll when things change in the world? So a lot of systems got signed off when the pandemic happened. And then there were people that physically had to go into their place of work to process that payroll. And it was dangerous in those early days because people didn't know what that level of risk could be. So those, all of a sudden, everyone's moving to the cloud, everyone's getting their SaaS-like technology, let's move to the cloud, let's approve it all, let's work from anywhere.
That panic buy word was really true.
Panic buy word. But it was interesting because at that time, I was actually in a HCM technology organization at that point. And there were some organizations that put all their teams on furlough. And there were others that wrapped up on, we're going to actually process this technology and we're going to make sure that we've actually got everything ready so that when we come out, we've got this new shiny system that, is going to take a lot of the pain away. It's going to enhance the employee experience. It's going to make it much easier for people to feel connected to the business. And so there was a real shift of, people that were originally going to go through transformation that just paused and others that wrapped it up. So, it's the same thing. It's like really interesting around how do you go and ask for that investment, right? That's your question. You need to understand what the costs look like. You don't just go and buy the cheapest or go and buy the most expensive. You need to really understand what's out there in the market and then actually understand what tailored for you what does that system or service provider look like? And what does that mean in terms of your journey? How many resources do you need? Because if you're running your payroll and you're doing a project on top of that, people can't do all of that work. They'll fall over and you'll end up with people like failing because people will just become exhausted either by the project or they'll become exhausted by the amount of demand on them. So those things around actually, do you put your payroll team into the project and then backfill and get people in there to just in a temporary basis to cover the payrolls while we're really focusing on making sure that the payroll goes live? And there's others who will say, no, actually, I want the payroll team to continue doing payroll as usual, and they'll bring consultants in. I always am pretty biased where I go with the former.
Yeah.
Because if the payroll team are actually going to be, like, they've got all the knowledge often in their head.
About the end.
They care
about the journey.
They're going to have to use it.
Yeah.
They're going to have to make this really sing so that everyone understands the value that that investment has had to the organization. So I always go with that approach. But I do think you sometimes need to wrap up and bolster your teams, whether that's through, data harmonization, data cleansing, business analysts, program leads, sometimes local people to help with the operational changes that are happening so that it's communicated effectively through change. And having all of those things considered, there's a cost for every single minute that someone's working on that. So you need to try your best to actually get a viewpoint of what that cost looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget, the world is ever changing. So when you put in a line item for a program manager that you think you're going to get at this cost, if you haven't done anything because it's taken 6 months, 2 years to actually get it through for the board approval, not in principle, but official, right? When you get to that stage, then at that point, maybe salaries have changed. Maybe there's a shortage of talent in that space. So then everyone's at more demand.
Yeah.
And when they're in demand, the price goes up.
More expensive, yeah.
It becomes more expensive. And so those are the things to really consider and to really put some extra contingency in. Because I'll tell you, if you go in and you deliver your project and you deliver it on time or quicker than you initially forecasted, and you actually are doing it under budget, you're a hero because you've saved the business money.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost better to account for all of the possible bad things that could happen.
Absolutely.
And when they don't happen, it's an instant win, really.
Absolutely. And never forget that your payroll connects to the biggest asset in your business. Because when your people do really, really well, then and they are paid properly and they feel that they're important to the business, they will thrive.
Yeah.
And they will stay. I had a friend who had a Salesforce consultancy business many years ago. And it was a small consultancy. He built it up. He had around about 15 people in the consultancy. And then he tried to change his payroll. And he had 3 payrolls that basically just went wrong. 1 month it went wrong. He managed to recover it. People still worked. They weren't happy, but they still carried on delivering good service. The second month, it went wrong. He was panicking. He was moving money himself, wiring funds directly to their accounts to make sure that that they get paid, and they didn't walk out. The third month, the entire team walked into the office and took equipment because they hadn't been paid. Mass walk out, couldn't deliver service to the existing contracts that he had to deliver. And so he had to sell his business because he was so fearful he'd end up in breach of contract because he couldn't deliver the service. All because a payroll project went wrong.
Wow.
Now that's extreme,
Yeah.
right? But it's true. And that's just, again, a really good example on where it goes wrong. It can be massively devastating for an organization because the people are the ones that are delivering the service, or they're delivering the expertise, or they're building, or whatever your product, services type organization. If you don't have people there doing that work, then you don't have a business.
Yeah, because like you said, like people are the biggest asset, and almost 9.9 times out of 10, you do only go to work to get paid. It doesn't matter how much you absolutely love your job. If all of a sudden your boss turned around tomorrow and said, well, you said you love it, so do it for free. You'd be out there till cripping anything, wouldn't you?
Well, I actually love it. So sometimes I will actually give away stuff for free just because I love it. If anyone wants a virtual coffee anytime, day or night, anywhere in the world, I have been known to get up at 4 a.m. and have a call with Asia Pac. So if anyone's over there and they want to just have a virtual coffee around global payroll, I'm your girl. I genuinely love talking about what's going on in the market. And I love to try and see how people can leverage some of that to actually help them with what they're trying to do in their career or what they're trying to do for their payroll team. Because again, I think that sharing those stories is so critical. It really is.
Yeah, and you learn from them, they learn from you.
Absolutely.
And collectively as a whole, the industry just gets better and better and better. So I think we're coming towards the end of the session. I would really, really like to recap on what are the really important steps that people need to take if they're getting to that point where they want to choose something new.
Important steps they need to take if they're thinking of something new. Well, first of all, you have to know what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So if it feels wrong, or your team are complaining, or your employees are complaining, or that's a really good starting point.
Yeah. What if it just feels a bit old?
If it feels a bit old, it's amazing actually, because there's so many, naturally us humans don't like change. So we get comfortable with what we know. And I have a really, really good friend of mine who I've known him 20 years, and he's moving to a new technology platform. And he's a bit resistant about it because he's so comfortable with the technology that he knows works brilliantly well for him. And he knows every bit of it inside out. He's having to learn something new. And so don't ever underestimate people that get comfortable with it as well. But if there's something that is categorically going wrong, service is poor, things aren't working, or there's new functionality or new things that you just can't do without workarounds or putting more impacts on your team, then start to dissect what's the problem statement and where would you like to see your payroll team go. When you can actually articulate that and understand that, then you can start doing what's the case for change, what's the levers, how do we build the metrics and the data points? How do we go through that process? How do we then look at the resources and the time it's going to take us to do it? Because all of those steps really help you to build that business case.
Yeah.
And then when you've actually got the measures, the metrics, you've got something on paper. It's amazing just even writing something down on paper. My advice, if you're ever putting a board pack together, is keep it really succinct, right? And have an appendix that has tons of information so that if you are presenting your presentation or your business case, that if someone asks a question, you know the answer because you've got the data points and the information at hand to demonstrate that you've really thought through how to be able to solve for that. But once you've went through that business case, it's really important that you actually identify, for that change to happen, how are you going to measure the success of it? So if you can't measure it, I don't believe you can manage it. So if you have, and it doesn't have to be 10 different measurements that you're setting that link to the success of the program. It could be 3 or 4, but simple measures that you can track. And that could be everything from business improvements. So how many payrolls have actually serviced? How many fewer queries have you got? What's the engagement of the payroll team? What's the engagement of the overall business towards payroll? Do you ask that question in your survey? Do people love their payroll team? Have they even thought about their payroll team? Exactly. But these kind of measures that you can constantly revisit to check that actually you're demonstrating the value of what it was that you were initially trying to roll out and prove that was a good case of change. So, and that can be from anything. As we said earlier on, it can be from simple process improvement to a big payroll transformation globally. at global level, touching every life. So I think those are the things to really think about. Also, add in a bit more, because you always will find something will go bump. So add in a bit more in contingency, and make sure that you've got the ear of your executives.
Yeah.
So that if there is a blocker or there's someone who's resistant and doesn't like the idea, this team in this country really wants to keep this system because they're so wedded to that system. And actually, you might need the CEO or the CFO to go and actually help them overcome that challenge, to get on board and to be supportive towards the change management. Change management and how these systems land is so important. And people often will forget about change management and how to communicate. Your pay slip's going to look different, or you're going to find it in a different place, or you're going to receive it with a different logo. When people see changes like that, they get worried if they don't know about it.
Yeah, especially to do with your money. Like if you see it and it's not the same, no matter who you are in the world and how much money you have, if you see something a tiny bit different, you're instantly like, that's not what I expected to see.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so helping them understand why it's an important change and why it's going to benefit them. Like even changes with legislation that might have an impact, or there's a new tax is coming in. How do you educate them earlier so that everyone's aware of it, and middle managers have got the right skill set to be able to overcome those local challenges? Payroll needs the time to do that.
Yeah.
And to educate HR and the learning team, or actually get out there and do that training and that education and for themselves, because that elevates the payroll position and the great work that they do across your own company. So all those things, I would always say, like, if you can start thinking about those things and build those parameters out, really good communication, really clear data and metrics, and keep it as simple as possible. Because if it's not simple and easy to explain, people don't understand it. So make sure it lands in the language that people understand.
Amazing. Thank you, Wendy. So I've just spent a whole hour asking you questions. And now I want it to be your turn. Is there one question that you would tell payroll leaders to ask themselves when they're at the very beginning of a project?
Something to ask yourself at the very beginning of a project. Lead with pride. It's not a question. It's more of a statement. I think payroll leaders in our community do such an incredible job, and we don't shout about it enough.
Yeah.
And I think if you can lead with pride, lead with confidence, you can really change the game.
Yeah.
Like, you really can. You can change it for your team. You can change it for your organization. You can champion it for the industry. And I really, really urge anyone that's going through any type of transformation, like, you can have the smallest team in the world, but you do such an important job. And so genuinely lead with pride. That would be more of my statement rather than actually a question.
I love that. Like, be proud of what you do, be proud of what you achieve, and actually, like, be proud of when you've made a mistake, finding out where and how you fix that. Like, that's huge to be proud of.
It's huge. Absolutely. Just think how much you're saving the business, or you're saving the risk, or you're saving that employee's experience when you're the person, or your team have done that. Be proud of it, because it's great, great work.
Wendy, I love that. And what a lovely way to close the session. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone for joining us as well. Please do stay tuned for the next session. Wendy, I think we've probably got some dinner and a bottle of wine to have.
I think that sounds fantastic. Take care, everybody.
See you soon.
Take care.